My name is Evelyn Miller, but everyone who truly knows me calls me Evie, and I'm 36 years old, living a pretty quiet life in Willow Creek, Oregon. Willow Creek isn't a huge place, but it's home a small town surrounded by green forests and the calming sounds of the nearby river. I live here with my amazing husband Mark and our three wonderful kids who are the absolute center of my universe. I always thought of myself as a pretty even-keeled person, someone who could handle anything life threw my way. My dad's side of the family was a big part of my life growing up. We had these huge, chaotic gatherings filled with laughter, too much food, and the kind of noisy love that sticks with you. My dad, he was the glue, always making sure everyone felt included, always with a big, booming laugh that filled the room. He was my rock, my confidant, the one who taught me to always stand up for myself, but also to cherish family above all else. His sudden passing 8 years ago hit me like a tidal wave. It was a tragedy that ripped through our world, leaving a gaping hole. I had to step up for my mom and my younger siblings, trying to hold everything together while my own heart was breaking. In the midst of that raw grief, I started to feel a shift with my dad's family. It was subtle at first, like a whisper you almost miss. The calls became less frequent, the invitations seemed to dwindle. It was as if without my dad there to bridge the gap, my connection to them suddenly became fragile, easily forgotten. Like a tether had been broken, and I no longer mattered as much as I once had. I tried not to dwell on it, reminding myself that everyone grieves differently, but a tiny seed of hurt had been planted. Then about 6 months after Dad passed, my cousin on his side, the oldest one, Sarah, was getting married. I loved weddings, the joy, the dancing, the celebration of new beginnings. And I loved Sarah, so of course I was excited for her. The invitation came, made out for me, my husband, and our 3 children. I RSVP'd yes for all 5 of us, eager to celebrate and perhaps rekindle some of those lost connections with the family. Weeks before the big day, life threw another devastating curveball. My best friend Laura was in a fatal car accident. Laura had been my soul sister since we were kids, we shared everything. The news shattered me completely. My husband Mark was incredible during this time. He was my anchor, taking care of the kids, finding childcare, so I could be at the hospital holding Laura's hand until the very end. After she passed, I helped her heartbroken mother plan the memorial and funeral arrangements. The world felt muted, gray, and sorrowful. Every day was a blur of grief and endless tasks. One morning I woke up and the first thing I saw were texts flooding my phone. They were from Sarah's mom, my aunt, my grandma, other cousins, all asking why we hadn't shown up to Sarah's wedding festivities. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. In my overwhelming grief and the chaos of losing Laura, I had completely forgotten about the wedding. Every single detail of it had slipped from my mind. I was horrified. I immediately responded to everyone, apologizing profusely and explaining that an emergency had come up, and I had completely forgotten to let them know we wouldn't be coming. I thought that would be the end of it, a simple explanation for an honest mistake during a time of immense personal tragedy. But I was wrong, it was far from over. Sarah's sister Bethany, who was also my cousin, started sending me a barrage of messages. Her texts were cold, demanding, focused entirely on money. She went on and on about the cost of catering for both the rehearsal dinner and the wedding reception, claiming that 10 plates hadn't been eaten due to our absence, and that I was responsible for the expense. I felt a surge of indignation mixed with my grief. I apologized again for the oversight, but tried to explain that Laura's accident had been incredibly short notice, an unexpected tragedy that consumed all my attention. I told her that in the whirlwind of those few days, I wasn't even sure if remembering to call them would have made a difference to the catering numbers, given how quickly everything happened. Bethany wouldn't let it go. Her texts grew more insistent, more accusatory. My patience finally wore thin. Feeling cornered and deeply hurt, I probably responded with more sharpness than I intended. I told her to just send me a bill, and then I muted her phone. I couldn't handle her petty demands on top of everything else. Minutes later, my phone rang. It was Sarah's mom, my aunt. She immediately scolded me, telling me I didn't need to respond to Bethany like that, and accused me of ignoring my cousin. I was so tired, so emotionally drained. I apologized to her too, not for my response to Bethany, but for missing the wedding, and I explained what had been going on in my life, the loss of my best friend, the funeral arrangements. I reiterated that I truly meant it when I said to send me a bill. I told her I could understand how a sudden change in guest numbers could mess up their plans and make them feel like money was wasted, and I was willing to cover it. My aunt's tone softened slightly, and she said not to worry about the money, she just didn't like us cousins fighting. She then offered condolences for Laura's loss and said she hoped we were doing well. Again, I thought it was finally done. I thought we could all move on. But the cousins weren't done, not by a long shot. At the next few family functions, Sarah and Bethany made a point of making snide remarks and jokes about my no-show at Sarah's wedding. They would laugh loudly, saying things like, "Oh, Evie should have provided all the food for this event to help balance things out." It felt like a constant jab, a reminder of my failure to them. I would glance at my aunt hoping for some support, some intervention, but she would just roll her eyes or look away, saying nothing. No one else in the family ever said anything either. I kept my mouth shut. I knew the drill. If I retaliated, if I said anything back, my aunt would immediately jump in and scold me for starting a fight. It was perfectly fine for her girls to be cruel, but if I defended myself, I would be the villain. This pattern continued for another family gathering. They even made some hinting comments about how little it must have cost for me to make a few desserts I had brought to a potluck gathering. That was it for me. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided I needed a break, a real break from their negativity and the endless drama. I sent a group text to all my aunts and my grandma explaining how I was feeling, how hurt I was by the constant jabs. I made it clear that I didn't want any special treatment, just a break from the drama. I told them not to expect me at any future functions for a little while. And so, I stepped away. I went almost a whole year without socializing with my dad's side of the family. It wasn't easy. It hurt deeply when my grandma would post things on Facebook like, "This was the best Easter we've had in a while," or "So glad I got to see all my family on 4th of July. The sting of exclusion was real. But I focused on my immediate family, my husband and my kids. They were my priority, my true support system, and in the end, they mattered the most. Around 7 months after I'd sent that group text, my aunt called me and invited me to a gathering at her place. She said it was time for both my cousins and me to get over this whole thing. I considered it for a long time. A year had passed, I had done a lot of healing, and I truly did miss some of them, especially my grandma. I decided it was enough time, perhaps they had grown up, so I showed up to the party hopeful for a fresh start. My cousins Sarah and Bethany immediately apologized for their past remarks. Their apologies seemed genuine, or at least I desperately wanted them to be. I in turn apologized again for my no-show at Sarah's wedding. It felt like a weight had been lifted, like everything was finally fine. We all spent the evening chatting, laughing. It was almost like old times. Many family events happened after that, and for a while there was no drama, no snide comments, nothing. I allowed myself to believe that we had truly moved past it, that the family I remembered, the one full of love and laughter, was back, that my cousins had learned their lesson. But the wounds of the past can sometimes fester beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to reopen. Now it was Bethany, the bride's sister from the first wedding, who was getting married. I had recently moved to a slightly different part of Willow Creek and hadn't seen much of the family for a while, so I was excited to attend her wedding. I RSVP'd, yes, eager to show my full support. The day arrived, a beautiful sunny day in Oregon. My husband and our 3 children and I dressed in our pastel colors, as per the dress code, our gift carefully wrapped in hand. I was truly there to celebrate Bethany and show her that I was over the past, that I valued our family connection. The ceremony was lovely. Bethany looked beautiful in her white dress. Afterwards, we all walked into the reception hall, a grand room filled with tables and decorations. We went to the large seating chart board to find our table number. I scanned the list, but our name, Evie Miller, was nowhere to be found. A kind-looking wedding coordinator noticed my confusion and approached me asking for my name. I told her. Her expression didn't change, but her words hit me like a physical blow. "Oh, the bride has you on the list of people who ate ahead of the ceremony, so you don't have a plate for dinner," she explained in a calm voice that felt deafeningly loud to me. "There's a table in the far corner for you, so others can move freely to get more food." I was absolutely stunned, heartbroken, humiliated. I looked over where she pointed, and I swear to you it was like something out of a bad sitcom. A tiny folding table pushed up against a wall right next to the restrooms, far away from all the other beautifully decorated tables. It was clearly an afterthought, a place for outcasts. My kids, innocent and oblivious, started to run towards it. I grabbed their hands, my own shaking. My husband Mark hadn't fully heard the coordinator's explanation, so he didn't quite understand what was happening. My vision blurred with tears of shame and anger. Without a word, I spun around and started walking out of the hall. As we walked out the front doors, my grandma suddenly appeared blocking my path. "Where are you going, Evie?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I explained quietly that we were leaving. But she could see me shaking on the verge of tears, and she held my arm, insisting on more information. I shook my head. "No, Grandma," I said, my voice a choked whisper. "I don't want to make a scene. This is Bethany's night, and I am definitely not going to start anything. I need to leave right now." She let go of my arm, her eyes wide with concern and confusion. We got into our car. It wasn't until we were safely inside and driving away that I finally explained everything to Mark. He was silent for a moment, his jaw tight. Then he reached for the door handle, clearly intending to go back inside and confront someone, Bethany, her mom, anyone. I knew what he would do. I knew he would absolutely scold someone. But I stopped him. "No," I said, "please, Mark, let's just leave." My voice was shaky but firm. We ended up at a fast food restaurant, a brightly lit, loud place that felt completely out of sync with the grand wedding we had just left. We ordered food just to feed the kids, who were oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I sat in a corner booth, quietly crying to myself, the tears streaming down my face, silent and burning. The realization hit me with crushing force how truly little I meant to my dad's family. How this was probably the last time I would ever see them. Most people might say good riddance, but let's face it, even with the most toxic relationships, there are always the good times too, the moments of shared history that make you want to believe everything is fine and that the bad times weren't a big deal. Mark sat beside me, holding my hand, rubbing my back, trying to assure me that we didn't need that chaos in our lives, that we still had plenty of other family. He bought me my favorite ice cream, and later that evening, we curled up on the couch at home watching a movie, surrounded by the comforting presence of our children. As soon as we left the wedding, I had turned my phone off, needing a break from the world. But I knew what to expect the next morning when I turned it on. Texts from everyone asking where I went, how rude it was not to stay the whole evening, how they didn't even get to see my kids. I didn't know if everyone knew of our seating and dining situation or not, but at that moment I didn't care. I wasn't talking to any of them. Good for the cousins, I guess. They got their stupid, petty revenge. The days that followed were a blur of numb heartache. I tried to go about my life, for my kids, for Mark, but a heavy cloud hung over me. Then about a week later, something unexpected happened. My aunt showed up at my house. Mark had seen her car pull up, and bless his heart, he made sure I stayed inside with the kids while he went out to speak with her on the porch. I sat by the window trying to listen to their hushed voices, my heart pounding. Turns out after Mark and I left the wedding, my grandma had turned into a bloodhound. She had seen me leave looking so distressed, and she knew something was deeply wrong. She first spoke with my aunt, who knew nothing about our seating arrangement. The cousins Sarah and Bethany were outside taking wedding photos, so my grandma and my aunt both approached the wedding coordinator. The coordinator, a little flustered, had explained the situation to them. Apparently Bethany, the bride, had told her that my family and I were on a special diet with multiple food restrictions, and that to avoid giving us special treatment in front of the other guests, we would be eating before the event. My aunt was completely stunned by the blatant lie, but my grandma, she was absolutely livid. That meek, sweet old lady stormed out the side of the venue, interrupting the wedding photos, where Bethany stood smiling with her bridesmaids. My grandma marched right up to Bethany, and in front of her entire wedding party, she began to scold her. I don't know exactly what was said, but Mark told me my aunt's description of it made his jaw drop. It was a spectacle. After that, except for the special events during the reception, the first dance, the bouquet toss, and so on, the bride and her bridesmaids stayed to themselves, looking embarrassed and uncomfortable. My aunt tearfully told Mark how truly sorry she was for letting this get this far, for not stepping in sooner, for allowing Bethany and Sarah's petty resentment to escalate to such a cruel act. She said she understood if I never wanted to communicate with them again after this, but she hoped someday that I would. And that's where we are now. My new normal is different. I don't plan on going to any family events anytime soon, not with Sarah and Bethany around. But I'm still going to stay in contact with my aunt and my grandma. It's tricky though. They all live on this 5-acre piece of property, one house per acre, so if I go hang out with one person, I'll for sure end up seeing other family members. That part will always be a challenge. But the sting of that day at Bethany's wedding has dulled a little, knowing that the truth came out and that my grandma, a woman I never thought capable of such fury, stood up for me. It wasn't the revenge I planned, but it was the justice I needed. It showed me who truly cared and solidified the bonds that actually mattered. And in the end, that was the greatest reward of all.